The discovery. The Threx Dominion fleet drifted through the silence of the rim, its hulls gleaming like knives under a pale star. They were hunters on routine patrol, searching for signs of life worth cataloging, exploiting, or extinguishing. To the Threx, exploration was not curiosity, it was conquest by another name. Admiral Velker, tall and armored in living carapace, studied the glowing glyphs on his command dais. Energy signatures, his sensors officer intoned. Uncharted world. Origin, fission-based industry. Primitive. Velker's mandibles clicked in amusement. Primitive prey is the sweetest. Prepare the fleet. We shall enlighten these savages. The ships angled toward the blue-green planet below, expecting tribal huts and crude radio towers. Instead, their scanners revealed sprawling fortresses dug into the mountainsides, rail lines snaking like veins through valleys, and silos buried deep beneath the earth. Velker frowned. Defenses? Here? Impossible. This system was uninhabited when last surveyed. But as the fleet descended, the truth unfolded in steel and fire. The colony was human. High in the mountains of Eryth, Governor-General Mara Kane watched the alien ships pierce her skies. She stood on the balcony of the citadel, a granite fortress reinforced with steel plating and shield projectors. Her face was weathered, her hair streaked silver, but her eyes burned with the same fire that had guided the colony for generations. "Sound the alarms," she ordered calmly. "It begins." Below, sirens wailed. Workers dropped their tools and ran to bunkers. Militia scrambled to their stations. Railguns hidden in cliffside emplacements powered up, their barrels glowing as capacitors charged. Mara's aide, young Commander Elias Kane, her son, rushed to her side. "They've come, Mother. Just like you said they would." She nodded, never breaking her gaze from the descending fleet. "We were never forgotten. We were left behind. And that meant we had to prepare." For 2 centuries, the colony had lived in isolation. The original colony ship had been crippled, its faster-than-light drive destroyed. Cut off from Earth, its people had faced famine, disease, and despair. But out of desperation came resolve. Their leaders decreed that survival meant preparation. One day, someone, or something, would come. And when that day came, humanity would not kneel. The first contact came through a thunderous broadcast that shook every speaker, every comms line on the planet. A voice, alien and layered, spoke in practiced authority. "Humans, you are discovered by the Threx Dominion. Submit, and you may endure as servants. Resist, and you will be extinguished." In the Citadel's command chamber, Mara stood before the comms array, hands clasped behind her back. Her council shifted nervously, some pale with fear. This was the moment they had dreaded and prepared for all their lives. Mara pressed the comm switch. Her voice carried across every frequency. "To the Threx Dominion," she said, each word a dagger. "We are not subjects. We are not prey. We are a free people. And we have been waiting for you." Her words echoed across the chamber. For a heartbeat, silence hung. Then the skies erupted. From the cliffs, concealed hatches yawned open. Railguns, massive and ancient, thundered to life. Missiles streaked upward, contrails carving white scars across the sky. The first Threx scout ships, arrogant and unshielded, were torn apart in blossoms of fire. In orbit, Velker reeled as his display filled with red sigils of destroyed craft. "Impossible," he growled. "These primitives have weapons of war?" His officers shifted uneasily. "Admiral, they are not primitives. Their defenses are coordinated, hardened, prepared." Velker slammed his clawed hand against the dais. "Then we will teach them fear." On the ground, chaos blended with discipline. Civilians rushed into bunkers, emerging seconds later with rifles. Children relayed messages through hand-crank radios. Farmers dragged old tractors fitted with armor plating into choke points. Every man, woman, and child was part of the defense. Elias returned from the forward batteries, his face streaked with soot. "First wave destroyed, Governor. But they'll be back with more. Heavier." Mara rested a hand on his shoulder, steadying him as much as herself. "Then let them come. Every hour we hold is another hour of proof that humanity does not bow. Not now." Not ever. She turned back to the comms array, knowing the alien admiral was listening, watching, calculating. You thought you found a lost colony, she said, her voice hard as steel. What you found was humanity, armed, waiting and ready. The room held its breath as her final words cut across the void. And if it's war you bring, then war is what you'll receive. The siege. Admiral Velker had expected surrender. Instead, he received fire. His fleet regrouped above the colony, dark silhouettes blotting out the stars. Anger radiated from him in cold waves. The Dominion's doctrine was clear. Resistance was crushed swiftly, decisively, and without mercy. Deploy the siege line, Velker commanded. If they wish to play soldiers, let them drown in the reality of war. From orbit, dropships howled downward, carrying siege walkers, towering machines with legs like iron pillars and plasma cannons mounted on their backs. Frigates repositioned, their bombardment arrays trained on the mountain valleys. The Threx would not waste time. They would shatter this colony and display its corpse to the galaxy as a warning. Within the citadel, Governor-General Mara Kane stood before the central holomap. Red markers swarmed across its surface, representing alien deployments closing around the colony. The air was hot with the hum of generators and the bark of officers relaying orders. They're tightening the noose, Elias reported, sweat glistening on his brow. Heavy walkers moving through the western passes. If they breach the valley walls, we'll be boxed in. Mara studied the map. Their railguns had bloodied the first wave, but the Dominion was bringing its true strength now. The colonists were outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched, on paper. But preparation was more than weapons. Preparation was spirit. She turned to the assembled council. Every family has trained for this day. Every factory is a munitions line. We have no civilians. We are all soldiers. Her words cut through the chamber like steel. Doubt flickered, then hardened into resolve. Orders rippled outward, barricades reinforced, hidden bunkers activated, and militia units deployed along the valley ridges. The siege began at dusk. Plasma fire rained from the skies, vaporizing swaths of forest and shattering ancient stone. Walkers lumbered forward, their cannons tearing gouges in the earth. The mountains glowed as if set ablaze by a second sun. And yet the humans endured. From camouflaged ridges, missile pods screamed, hammering the walkers' joints until they collapsed like broken beasts. Railgun slugs punched through alien frigates, sending them spiraling into the valleys below. Farmers armed with ancient rifles harried the flanks, striking and vanishing before the Threx could retaliate. Every strike was met with loss. Homes burned. Outposts crumbled. Families buried their dead by torchlight before returning to the line. But with each loss came a vow, to hold, to fight, to bleed the invader dry. At the forward defense line, Elias crouched in the mud beside his squad. Alien artillery boomed overhead, the ground quaking with each impact. He raised his binoculars, watching as a siege walker advanced, its cannons spitting molten fire. They think they're unstoppable, Elias muttered. His squad's engineer, a wiry woman named Daria, grinned through soot-streaked teeth. Then let's stop them. Together, they rolled out a crude, ugly device, an electromagnetic pulse cannon, cobbled together from salvaged reactor coils and copper wire stripped from abandoned tunnels. Daria slammed her palm on the activation rune. The cannon screamed, discharging a pulse that shimmered across the battlefield like a rippling wave. The walker staggered mid-step, its cannons flickering out, joints locking. For a heartbeat it stood frozen, then toppled sideways, crashing into the valley with a sound like thunder. The squad erupted in cheers. Elias radioed the citadel. Target down. Prototype works. In the command chamber, Mara allowed herself the faintest smile. Improvisation, the oldest human weapon. In orbit, Velker seethed as reports poured in. Walkers destroyed. Gunships lost. Resistance stiffening. He slammed his clawed fist onto the dais. Barbaric vermin. Do they not understand futility? Their deaths are inevitable. One of his lieutenants hesitated before speaking. Admiral, perhaps we underestimated their preparedness. Velker's eyes narrowed to burning slits. No. They are weak. They must be weak. Crush them harder. Burn them until they understand. But behind his fury lurked something the Threx rarely felt: doubt. That night, in the smoldering ruins of a farmstead, Mara walked among the survivors. Children carried ammunition. Old men sharpened bayonets. Wounded soldiers refused to rest, instead helping to fortify barricades with trembling hands. Mara stopped beside a grieving mother who clutched her son's bloodied rifle. "I'm sorry," Mara said softly. The woman met her gaze with tear-streaked defiance. "Don't be," he fought. "That's what matters." It was then Mara understood the truth. Their strength was not in the walls they built, nor the weapons they forged. Their strength was in their refusal to surrender, in the unity born of shared struggle. The Threx could bring their fleets, their firepower, their arrogance. But they would never break that. As dawn painted the horizon blood-red, Elias stood at the ridge, watching the alien line smolder. His voice carried across the comms to the citadel. "They thought we'd be easy prey. But we're not prey. We're the hunters now." And in the shadows of the mountains, the colony sharpened its claws. The siege had only begun. Escalation. The smoke of burning forests curled into the sky, visible even from orbit. The colony of Eryth had survived the Threx's first siege, but survival came at a price. Shattered homes, blood-soaked earth, and a generation of youth already baptized in battle. Yet the colonists did not despair. Where others might cower, they sharpened their resolve. Where cities fell, new barricades rose from rubble. Each attack only hardened their will. Admiral Velker, however, was no longer amused. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching footage of the toppled walkers and wrecked gunships. To him, the human survival was not defiance, it was insult. "They wield technology centuries beneath us," Velker growled, mandibles clenching. "And yet they bite. Why?" His aide hesitated. "Perhaps because they have no choice, Admiral. They were forged for this." Velker's gaze lingered on the flames of the planet below. "Then we shall show them what true war means." In the Citadel's war chamber, Mara Kane gathered her commanders. The holomap flickered with fresh alien deployments, carriers repositioning, orbital bombardment platforms unfolding like dark blossoms above the skies. "They're escalating," Elias said grimly. Mara nodded. "They've realized we won't bow. Now they'll try to break us completely." Her voice carried no fear, only iron certainty. Around the table, militia leaders and engineers leaned closer, every face gaunt with exhaustion but sharpened with purpose. "Then we escalate too," Mara declared. "If they wish for war, we take the fight beyond our walls." A silence followed, broken by Daria's grin. "About time. We've been building toys for years. Let's use them." By nightfall, the colony launched its first counteroffensive. Hidden beneath ancient mines, engineers had assembled craft that were little more than armored coffins with engines bolted on. They were crude, ungainly, but armed with scavenged missile racks and hardened steel plating. The pilots who climbed into them knew they were boarding death traps. And yet the hangars echoed not with fear, but with laughter and songs of defiance. Elias, leading the first squadron, saluted his mother at the launch bay doors. "We'll carve our names into their fleet," he promised. Mara clasped his arm, pride and worry warring in her eyes. "Make sure you come back, Elias. Dead heroes don't rebuild worlds." The bay doors opened, and the makeshift starfighters roared into the sky. Above the planet, the Threx fleet was unprepared for humans striking upward. The small craft darted between frigates like angry hornets, launching missiles at exposed engines and retreating before the lumbering alien gunners could track them. Elias's voice rang through comms. "Hit them where it hurts. Engines, weapons, command nodes. Make them bleed." Explosions flared against the darkness. A Threx frigate split in two, tumbling into the atmosphere in a trail of fire. Another had its hangar bay ruptured, spilling fuel and screaming soldiers into the void. The cost was steep. One by one, human craft burst into flames, shredded by plasma fire. Elias's squadron dwindled, names vanishing from the comms list. But for every human ship destroyed, another alien vessel faltered, crippled by ingenuity and rage. In the Citadel, Mara's fists tightened as she listened to the battle reports. Each loss was a wound in her chest, yet each victory proved a truth she already knew: humanity could fight giants and still draw blood. The Threx retaliated with fury. Orbital strikes scorched entire valleys, turning forests to ash and rivers to steam. Siege platforms blanketed the skies in firestorms, their bombardments leveling villages that had stood for centuries. Still, the colonists fought back. In the shadow of one burning town, Daria led a sabotage team beneath an alien landing zone. They crawled through tunnels their grandparents had dug generations earlier, planting explosive charges at structural weak points. "Ready," she whispered, sweat streaking her face. Her squad nodded. The charges detonated, collapsing the ground beneath an entire alien outpost. Siege walkers toppled, their carapaces cracking as they tumbled into the sinkhole. From the ridges above, militia cheered and opened fire, tearing into the panicked Threx soldiers. Admiral Velker's fury burned cold. He watched the sabotage footage in silence, his claws flexing until the metal dais groaned beneath them. "Admiral," his lieutenant asked cautiously, "what are your orders?" Velker's mandibles spread in a slow, cruel smile. "These humans believe themselves predators. But predators are nothing before the Dominion. Prepare the annihilation beam. Let their world feel despair." Back on Eryth, Mara stood at the Citadel balcony as the night sky shimmered with strange light. A new weapon bloomed in orbit, a massive lance of energy-gathering power. Even from the surface, its menace was clear. Her heart sank, but her voice did not waver. She turned to Elias, who limped from his battered starfighter, armor scorched and bloodied. "They're bringing something worse," Mara said quietly. Elias spat blood, his eyes fierce despite the exhaustion. "Then we'll bring something better." And though the colony was scarred, though its people bled, their fires only burned brighter. For every weapon the Threx unveiled, humanity answered with defiance. The war was no longer a siege. It was becoming something greater, an escalation that would decide not just survival, but the fate of two species. The turning point. The skies above Eryth burned. The Threx annihilation beam gathered its fury, a spear of light stretching from orbit toward the planet. Entire valleys trembled as the weapon's energy began to focus. One discharge would scour the citadel and leave nothing but molten glass. In the command chamber, silence gripped the human defenders. Some stared in awe, others in dread. Even the most hardened veterans felt the weight of inevitability. Governor-General Mara Kane stood at the center of it all, her face lit by the terrible glow from the holomap. Her voice cut through the tension like steel. "They think this will break us. They think we will kneel. But this is not the end. This is our chance." Elias, battered and bandaged from the last sortie, leaned heavily on the table. "We can't match that weapon, Mother. But maybe we don't need to." Daria smirked, her eyes glinting with the fever of invention. "Every beam needs a focus crystal. Every crystal has a frequency. Disrupt the frequency, and the whole thing could unravel." Mara turned to her people. "Then we strike now. One last blow, before the beam fires. Everything we are, everything we've built, this is the moment it was for." Preparations consumed the citadel. Engineers stripped power from factories, homes, even medical wards, feeding it into the great railguns hidden in the mountains. Saboteurs carried explosives into alien-occupied zones, ready to unleash chaos at the signal. Farmers turned their last tractors into armored battering rams. Every person, from child to elder, had a role. Not because Mara commanded it, but because they chose it. When the signal came, the colony would rise as one. The final battle began before dawn. The annihilation beam crackled, its energy flaring brighter than the morning sun. From the mountains, hidden railguns thundered, slamming into Threx frigates that guarded the weapon's flanks. Makeshift starfighters screamed into orbit, hurling themselves at enemy carriers with reckless abandon. On the ground, militias poured from bunkers and tunnels, tearing into the occupying forces with rifles, knives, and bare fists if they had to. Eryth had become a single living weapon, every soul burning with defiance. Elias led the assault squadron. His craft shook violently as he dodged plasma fire, alarms wailing, hull plating scorched. But his eyes never left the target, the beam's focusing crystal, glowing like a star above the fleet. "All wings, follow my lead," he barked over comms. "We take that crystal or we die trying." On the flagship, Admiral Velker watched the chaos with contempt. His fleets were bleeding, his walkers shattered, but still he clung to arrogance. "Futile," he hissed. "Their desperation cannot stop inevitability." The beam's charge neared completion. Velker's mandibles spread in cruel triumph. Fire! But at that instant, Daria's sabotage activated. She and her team had infiltrated a captured relay station, planting resonance disruptors along its power conduits. The devices pulsed, sending waves of interference surging through the Threx network. The annihilation beam faltered, its light flickering. "Now!" Elias roared. The human strike hit like thunder. Missiles slammed into the weakened shield around the crystal. Railgun slugs followed, piercing its housing with earth-forged steel. Elias dove his fighter straight into the heart of the storm, weapons blazing until his magazines ran dry. The crystal cracked. The focused energy spiraled out of control, lightning lashing across the Threx fleet. Ships erupted in fireballs as their reactors overloaded. Velker's flagship shuddered, alarms shrieking as flames consumed its hull. On the surface, the colonists looked up to see the sky ignite, alien warships falling like burning meteors, the beam unraveling in a storm of light. In the citadel, Mara's voice rang over the comms. "They sought to erase us. Instead, they erased themselves. This is our world, and we will never bow." Her words were carried across the valley, across every bunker and barricade. The cheer that followed was not just victory, it was liberation. The Threx survivors fled into the void, their once proud fleet reduced to wreckage. Admiral Velker's flagship was last to fall, consumed in the explosion of his own weapon. The Dominion had come to break a lost colony. Instead, they had awakened a human war machine. When silence finally settled over Eryth, it was broken only by the crackle of fires and the weary breaths of survivors. Families embraced in the rubble, soldiers lowered their weapons, and children gazed in wonder at the stars now free of enemy ships. Elias staggered from the wreckage of his fighter, greeted by his mother's embrace. "You made it," Mara whispered. "Barely," Elias rasped with a tired grin. "But we made it." In the weeks that followed, the colony buried its dead, rebuilt its walls, and studied the wreckage of the Threx fleet. What had begun as survival became something greater. Engineers repurposed alien technology. Militias drilled into armies. For the first time in generations, humanity looked outward not with fear, but with resolve. Mara stood atop the citadel, watching the sunrise. Around her, the banners of Eryth fluttered defiantly in the wind. "They called us forgotten," she murmured. "They called us prey. But we were always preparing." Elias joined her, his gaze fixed on the stars. "And now, the galaxy will know, humanity doesn't just survive. Humanity fights back." The lost colony was lost no longer. It had become the spark of a war the Dominion would never forget.